Hello, my name is Alex, and I have been a part of Discovery for about 4 years. I want to welcome you here this morning. We are glad to have you part of the community, and let's worship together.
There is a light that burns in the darkness. There is a hope that washes the fear away. There is a peace that settles around us. It is your love that sets our hearts ablaze. Let's sing that again. There is a light. There is a light that burns in the darkness. There is a hope that washes the fear away. There is a peace that settles around us. It is your love that sets our hearts ablaze. Father, we're on our knees with every heartbeat. We bring you this offering. Lord, come and fill this place. Father, we're crying out. Spirit, we need you now. Glorious love surrounds us. Lord, come and fill this place. Sing, there is a king that reigns in victory. There is a king that reigns in victory. There is a mercy strong enough to save. We feel it rising up from the ashes. There is a love that overcame the grave. Love surrounds us. Lord, come and fill this place. Lord, come and fill this place.
I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you. And I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always. And I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always, Jesus. And I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always.
And I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always. And I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always.
Father, we're on our knees with every heartbeat. We bring you this offering.
Lord, come and fill this place. Father, we're crying out. Spirit, we need you now. Glorious love surrounds, and I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always, and I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always.
I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always. And I will worship you. I'll worship you. I'll worship you always.
My life is yours. My hope is in you only. My heart you hold. 'Cause you made this sinner holy, holy. Holy. Your glory is so beautiful. I fall onto my knees in awe, and the heartbeat of my life is to worship in your light. 'Cause your glory is so beautiful. Your glory is so beautiful.
And my life is yours.
My life is yours.
My hope
Is in you only.
in my heart you hold.
Aren't you?
You made
This sinner holy and holy. Your glory is so beautiful. I fall onto my knees in awe, and the heartbeat of my life is to worship in your light. 'Cause your glory is so beautiful. Your glory is so beautiful.
glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. We sing glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good.
We sing glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. We sing glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good.
miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Yes, you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. One more time. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. God, we thank you that that is who you are, that you are the promise keeper, and that you do make a way when it feels like that there isn't a way, God.
And thank you that even when we can't see you or feel you, you're still moving and you're still good. Jesus, and we just thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your faithfulness. And we put our trust in you. We thank you that we get to worship you and get to commune with you. Thank you for your presence, God. Amen.
Hey everybody, I'm Mariah Van Tress and I'm the Worship Arts Director here at Discovery.
And I'm Garrett Vasquez, and I'm engaged to the Worship Arts Director here at Discovery.
Well, we are super excited to take communion with you all this morning.
At Discovery, we take communion together every week, and it's a great way to remember what Jesus came down here and did for us. While we can remember that every day through prayer or worship or whatever it is we choose to do, it's a really good thing to take time once a week to actually physically take part in it and take in the bread and take in the wine and remember the sacrifice that Jesus did when he came down here. So if everyone wants to gather their elements, whatever it is you have available, we have some bread and some, what do we have in here?
Cranberry juice.
Cranberry juice. We're going to pray before we do that. Jesus, thank you so much for loving us and for being with us. Thank you for coming down here and the sacrifice you made for us, and thank you for dying for us. I pray that when we take communion together, that we really take in your heart and let it transform our heart. And I pray that you do in us what you need to be done, and let us be open to that and be willing, and just soften our hearts to be changed by you. We love you so much, and we thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
And at this time, we're going to take a moment to pray for some of our local partners. If you don't know any off the top of your head, you can pray for Young Life or Hope Kids or Juvenile Justice. So we'll just take a minute to pray for them. All right, now we're going to move on to offering. Here at Discovery, we partner with many different organizations, both locally and globally, and your financial generosity makes it possible for us to be able to support these organizations. And if you are interested in being a part of financial giving, there is going to be a QR code on the screen, and that will take you to the PushPay app where you can donate. Or if you're on the Church Center app, you can just go find that donate button and give directly through there. And if you have yet to get on the Church Center app, I highly encourage you to do so. It's going to make it so much easier for you to connect with everything church-wise right now while we're all spread out and online. And if you want to gather your kiddos around, we have Kelsey to tell you an awesome kid story. So sit back and enjoy.
Hey everyone, it's Miss Kelsey here. I'm so excited to tell you our Bible story today. For those of you who have heard me tell the story before, you know the drill. But for those of you who haven't heard me tell the story, get ready to do some shouting, because we are going to do some quiz multiple choice questions throughout the story. I'll ask a question, we'll put the answers on the screen, and I want you to shout as loud as you can what you think the answer is. Okay, can you do that for me? Awesome, let's get started. So our story today is from the Old Testament in the Bible, which is the first half, and it's from a book called Judges. And the story starts out with a lovely husband and wife. But the husband and wife are really sad because they really want to have kids, but they can't. And they've prayed a lot to God and talked to him and talked to each other about how excited they are to have kids someday, but it's just not happening. But one day, God answers their prayer. An angel shows up to the wife. Your prayers have been heard. You are going to have a baby boy. The wife was so full of joy. She couldn't believe what the angel was telling her. But then the angel gave her kind of some weird instructions for her new baby. What do you think those instructions were? A, you have to do the chicken dance 12 times in order to become pregnant. B, you are not allowed to cut your baby's hair. C, you must name your child SpongeBob. Or D, the only thing you're allowed to eat while you're pregnant is pizza. Good job, everyone. The answer is B. She wasn't allowed to cut her baby's hair. The angel said to her, "Do not let a razor touch your baby's head, for he will be dedicated to God." That was some really weird instructions, right? But sure enough, the wife became pregnant, she had a baby boy, and they named him Samson. Both the husband and the wife were so excited to have him, and they followed the angel's instructions. They didn't cut his hair once. Imagine growing up never being able to cut your hair. I know a lot of you for the past couple months had to go a long time without getting a haircut, and that can be pretty annoying just when it starts to grow out and it gets in your face and gets itchy. But imagine going your whole life up to when you're an adult and not cutting your hair. How long do you think it was? It was probably to the floor, I think. That would be some really long hair. God blessed Samson because he never cut his hair and his parents followed God's instruction. How do you think God blessed Samson? Was it A, he was super fast, B, he could turn invisible, C, he gave him an Iron Man suit, or D, he made him super strong? Nice job, everyone. Of course, the answer is D. God made him really strong. In fact, he was so strong that he fought off a lion. Ah! Eventually, Samson became the leader of the Israelites. The Israelites were God's chosen people, and Samson led them. But the Israelites had some enemies, the Philistines and the Philistine army. Sometimes Samson had to fight the Philistines, but he always overcame and won because God was with him and God made him so strong. One day, he met a woman named Delilah. There was one issue with Delilah, though. She was a Philistine. She was part of the people who were supposed to be Samson's enemy. Samson didn't care, though, and he fell madly in love with Delilah. But when the Philistines found out that Delilah was with Samson, they came up with a clever plan. Samson and Delilah are in love? I wonder if we can convince Delilah to betray Samson. So they went ahead and asked Delilah, "See if you can trick Samson into telling you his secret. Then we can capture him and tie him up. If you do it, we'll give you lots of money." How do you think Delilah responded to the Philistines' question? Was it A, "I would never betray Samson"? B, "I don't need any money"? C, "Yes, I will try and find out his secret"? Or D, "Ask him yourself"? Yes, unfortunately, the answer is C. She agreed to the Philistines' evil plan and agreed to try and find out Samson's secret. Delilah really liked the idea of getting some money. Ooh, money. She went to Samson and said, "Samson, what is it about you that makes you so strong? Is there any chance that people could tie you up and capture you? If someone ties me up with 7 fresh bowstrings, I will lose my strength." Now, we know that's not what makes Samson strong, but Delilah didn't know that. And so that night, she got together 7 bowstrings, and when Samson was sleeping, she snuck in the Philistine leaders. And when he was asleep, she tied him up with those bowstrings, and she yelled to Samson, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you!" Ah! Samson woke up and easily broke the bowstrings. Ah! The Philistines ran away as fast as they could in fear. How do you think that Delilah felt after she found out Samson had lied to her? Was it A, angry, B, happy, C, proud, or D, relieved? You're right, it's A. She was pretty angry at him for lying to her. "Samson, you lied to me. Please tell me the secret of how you are so strong. If anyone ties me up with a brand new rope, I will lose my strength." This made Delilah happy. And sure enough, that night when Samson went to bed, Delilah got brand new ropes out of the packages. She snuck the Philistine leaders in, and once she had tied him up with those brand new ropes, she yelled, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you!" Ah! But just like before, Samson woke up and easily broke the ropes because of his strength, and the Philistines ran away in fear. Again, Delilah was really upset that Samson had lied to her. So she begged, and eventually he told her, "If you braid my hair and weave some fabric into it, I will lose my strength." And just like before, Samson went to bed. Delilah snuck in the Philistines. She braided his long hair and put fabric in it and yelled, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you!" Ah! But of course, that wasn't what made Samson strong. So again, he woke up with his hair braided, and the Philistines ran away in fear. Now at this point, Delilah was really mad. "Samson, do you not love me? Why do you keep lying to me and making me look like a fool?" Samson went a really long time without telling Delilah his secret. But every single day, she begged him and she nagged him and she told him that he didn't love her because he wouldn't tell her his secret. So eventually, one day, he gave in. Okay, Delilah. If somebody cuts my hair, I will lose my strength. But please don't tell anybody. This was not a good choice for Samson because just like every time before, Samson went to bed, she snuck in the Philistine leaders, but this time she cut off his hair, and when she yelled, "Samson, the Philistines, they're upon you!" Ah! Samson woke up ready to fight, but he realized all of his strength had left him and his hair was gone. "Oh no, my hair, my strength!" The Philistines captured Samson and tied him up, and unfortunately they made him blind. They used him as entertainment and made fun of him and mocked him in front of all of their people. One day, Samson asked to be tied up against a pillar so that he could lean against it. It was at this moment where he realized he had completely lost focus on God. He was so distracted by Delilah and his love for her that he had forgotten about God. Samson prayed, "Sovereign God, remember me. Please bring me my strength. Just one more time." God heard Samson's prayer, and something amazing started to happen. His hair started to grow back, and as his hair grew back, his strength started to come back. Once Samson realized that his full strength was back, he pushed his hands on the pillars that he was in, and the whole building came to the ground. It's important that we remember to keep our focus on God. There's a lot of things happening in the world right now, and a lot of different ways that we can be looking and keeping our focus. Those things are really important, and it's important for us to care about them and to try and make a difference. But when we focus on God first and ask Him to help us with those things, it helps us to love people better and make a bigger difference. Thanks for listening to my story today. Have a good day.
Well, hey there, I'm so excited to get to be with you today. Back when Steve invited me to share this morning, I asked him directly, Steve, I need some pointers on how to give a great sermon. And he looked me right in the eye, and as seriously as possible, he said, Zach, if you want to give a fantastic sermon, there's really only one thing that you need. You need to get a pair of salmon pants. And clearly today, we're in for a wild ride. It's going to be a fun morning. My name is Zach Krieger, and I serve with one of Discovery's local partners called Young Life. I've served with them for the last 13 years, and the whole idea that drives Young Life is teenagers. We partner with local schools. We're here today at the school that I serve at, Legacy High School, and Young Life leaders go into local schools. We meet kids here who don't go to local churches, and The whole idea of Young Life is we want to engage them in relationship. We want to become their friends. We want to learn their stories, all in the hopes to earn the right to be heard. This ministry has won me over when I was not a fan before I knew what they were really up to. I'm also married. My wife Ashley and I are celebrating 14 years this summer. Ashley serves as a child and family therapist both in and outside our home. She works at Children's Hospital. And our three boys, Brogan, Deacon, and Oaks, are 9, 8, and 2. We love getting to parent them together, and we love getting to be a part of the church here at Discovery. We've been members here for the last 7 years, and I think the thing about not only Discovery but the church that won me over was how Discovery leaves on a Sunday morning. And if you're checking out Discovery today for the first time, know that what's happening here on screen, this is just such a small sliver of what it means to this church to be church. And early on for me, it was a huge disappointment and even frustration to go to churches where it felt like you would walk in, stand up, sit down, hear a sermon, and dodge for the parking lot as soon as possible. The way this church engages homelessness in our community, the way this church chooses to talk and think about mental health and how to provide services for people who can't afford them, the way they relationally are involved with their global partners, personally involved with local partners. I love the things that happen outside of this church. Church is the best when it chooses to move outside of its walls, and I think that's because it follows the pattern of Jesus when it does that. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're in the middle of this sermon series called The Better News from Mark. We've been studying the book of Mark. Today, we're diving right in to Mark chapter 7. But before we do, there's so many incredible things that we'll miss if we don't take a second to zoom all the way back to a 30,000 foot level and ask some questions about what's going on here. And so some things to know. First of all, Mark, the writer, is known as John Mark as we get into the book of Acts and later on in Scripture. And he is a traveling companion of Peter the disciple, the apostle. And Peter has found himself on mission in Italy. He's gone right into the center of the Roman Empire to Rome to start sharing Jesus with people. Now, it's a little bit of a precarious situation because the Roman emperor at the time is a guy by the name of Nero. Nero hated this budding religious sect called Christianity, or the Way. He would love to arrest Christians and throw them into the Colosseum to be mauled by animals or killed by gladiators. It was common knowledge that in his evening banquets out in his gardens, he would have Christians lit on fire to serve as the lanterns so that the party could carry on further into the night. And here we find Peter, who's going, that's where I'm feeling called to go start a church. It should not shock us at all that his first thing would be to turn to his traveling companion Mark and say, hey, I don't know if I'm going to make it to church this Sunday. We'll see what happens, but we should probably write down some of the things that I've seen and heard. If Jesus is the most important thing, people need to know his story. So that's the climate that Mark is being written in, but it's also important to know that Mark is being written first and foremost for Christians who are Roman. And this is a huge, huge detail because this early church was predominantly Jewish. And the religion itself at this point is predominantly Jewish. It's all stemmed from the Old Testament. Jesus is this Jewish man. Up until Mark 7, the entire book of Mark is story after story of Jesus engaging Jewish people in Jewish communities doing Jewish things. And so to be Roman or to be a Gentile, there was a very big divide there culturally. And to be a Gentile, from a Jewish perspective, means that you were unclean, that you were dirty, that you were not to be mingled with. And that all comes from this Old Testament idea that God had made promises to Israel because Israel was special. The Jewish people were special, and he did not want them to be contaminated or to be made unclean by interacting with anybody else. But somehow in the process, some really big things got missed, and we're going to see Jesus engaging directly with some of those problems. Also, it's so important as we read the story, the book of Mark, this literary device, that everything he's doing is actually going to point to the next chapter, Mark 8, where he's going to ask Peter a very important question. Jesus will ask him, who do you say that I am? And Mark is intentionally building his book to have all these rapid fire stories to build towards this question. And so for us as modern day readers, the same question will hit us in one more chapter. This is one of the last stories that we get where Jesus is saying, okay, judge me. Who do you say that I am? So who in this story will we find Jesus to be? It's incredibly important. Finally, we won't have a ton of time to dive too deeply into this, but in life groups or in conversations with friends or in your own study, I would encourage you. The beginning of Mark chapter 7 starts with an interaction where Jesus is having dinner with some religious leaders, some Pharisees, and his friends, the disciples, are also having dinner. Now, they're all Jewish in this room, and the disciples have kind of skipped some of the niceties. They skipped some of the Jewish tradition about how properly to wash your hands. So their hands are now unclean, and they're reaching into food in the communal Middle East, and they're touching food, and that food's becoming unclean, and then they're eating that food and they're becoming unclean, and these religious leaders are freaking out, saying you can't just do that. And Jesus famously at the beginning of this chapter, and this statement undergirds everything we're going to talk about, says, it's not what you put into your body that defiles you. That's not what makes you unclean. What makes you unclean is what comes out of you. The author Carl Medeiros would rephrase this with the idea of Jesus loved to offend the mind to expose the heart. There is a fence that Jesus is beginning to address in this story, and it is by no accident that directly from here, the story we are going to spend our time in today includes Jesus going into a place where he's going to be engaging race and prejudice and sexism. I know, the salmon pants are working. So here we go. We're going to dive into Mark chapter 7. We're going to pick this up, and we're going to begin in verse 24. And it says this: From there, Jesus set out for the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house there where he didn't think he would be found, but he couldn't escape notice. He was barely inside when a woman who had a disturbed daughter heard he was there. She came and she knelt at his feet, begging for help. The woman was Greek, Syro-Phoenician by birth. She asked him to cure her daughter. He said, "Stand in line and take your turn. The children get fed first. If there's any left over, then the dogs get it." She said, "Of course, master, but don't dogs under the table get scraps dropped by the children?" Jesus was impressed. "You're right. On your way. Your daughter is no longer disturbed. The demonic affliction is gone." She went home, and she found her daughter relaxed on the bed, the torment gone for good. Okay, there is a lot packed in here for us, and it's important that we get every single piece. So, piece by piece, let's go through this. First off, it starts out by saying Jesus left for the vicinity of Tyre. All through the beginning of Mark, Jesus has this very clear rhythm of doing radical ministry, preaching healing, doing incredible things, and then withdraw. He will rest. He will go on retreat. And the further you get into Mark, the more you see he's not being very successful at rest because he's becoming so prominent, so famous, that people are following him wherever he's going. Here in this story, when it says he's leaving for the region of Tyre, Jesus has spent almost all of his time around the region of Galilee. Tyre, by the way the crow flies, is about a 20-mile journey, but it's over some pretty rugged mountain passes. This is a time where robbers, bandits would be a big problem. So likely Jesus' journey, this is about an 85-mile walk. And to put that into context, this would be like walking from Broomfield to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Only picture Cheyenne as like a really luxurious Mediterranean beachside resort town. That's a big stretch of the imagination, but you get the idea. This is a long walk. Jesus is going on vacation. But there's one more thing that the original readers would pick up on here. Jesus is leaving Jewish country and is clearly going into pagan country. He is going deeper into the Roman Empire. He's going away from where things are predominantly Jewish and going to where things are predominantly Greek. Jesus here is choosing to intentionally displace himself, to go to places where he doesn't belong. And I think with the story of what pollutes, that what he said to the Pharisees as the backdrop to this story, it's by no accident that he's going there. He knows that there's something that needs to be healed and set right. Something is broken, and he's choosing to physically go into that place. It goes on. He entered the house there where he didn't think he would be found, but he couldn't escape notice. How did he not escape notice? He's walking into a totally other city, another region, into a place where a Jewish guy shouldn't be that famous. And Mark actually gives us a huge hint if we go back to Mark chapter 3. This is one of the first times where Jesus' ministry is just exploding. People are coming from all over the place, and Mark specifically gives us the note. People actually even came from as far away as Tyre and Sidon. People from this town have seen Jesus in action. They've seen the show, and clearly for the last 4 chapters, these folks have now gone back and spread word around town, and now Jesus is known even out there in the beach cities. This is an incredible detail, and then it starts to get really interesting. He was barely inside when a woman who had a disturbed daughter heard where he was. She came and she knelt at his feet, begging for help. The woman was Greek, Syro-Phoenician by birth, and she asked him to cure her daughter. Okay, in these 4 sentences, this is an absolute fireworks show. A couple things that we learn about this woman, 3 big things. She's a woman, and she's in the Middle East, and she's bursting into a room full of men. Even by today's standards in the Middle East, this is not okay. This is crossing so many gender and cultural boundaries that would not have been acceptable to anyone in the room at the time. She is choosing to displace herself despite her gender. This is a big detail. Second, she's Greek and she's Syro-Phoenician. She is a part of the empire that has taken over the world. They have dominated and oppressed this Jewish group of people. The original Jewish readers would have immediately picked up on the idea that she is the enemy. She does not belong. She is not welcome. She is unclean, and Jesus should not interact with this woman. Also, she is Greek. She's Hellenized. She speaks the language. She wears the fashion. She drinks the Kool-Aid. Everything about this woman exudes class. And we get one further detail that Mark very clearly gives us. She was born Syro-Phoenician. Her family is from this area. So not only is she part of the empire, but she's likely old money. She is at least middle, if not upper class. This is a woman of dignity who's entering this room. Critical details. You can start to feel even some of our modern day context creeping in here. You see an upper class person from the dominant majority entering a space with a person from the oppressed minority. Add some gender issues into that, and this is a very intense room to be in. And all of the original readers are understanding the taboo of what's happening here. She doesn't belong here, but she is also displacing herself, going to places that are uncomfortable for her because something is broken and it needs to be healed. Third, she is humble. She runs into the room. She falls down at Jesus' feet. She's just in pieces to kick this thing off. This is kind of an unusual sight to watch a woman who's dressed that way, looks that way, is from that part of town, fall apart like this. Why is she doing this in front of this Jewish man? How does she know to do this? I think the one thing that we can bank on is she's heard the story. She's heard the rumors. For all these people back in Mark chapter 3 that were coming back and telling stories, Mark specifically in chapter 3 gives us the detail Jesus was casting out demons. She's heard these stories. And somehow she gets it in her head that Jesus' goodness is consistent no matter where he goes or who he's with. She can humble herself because she trusts that Jesus is going to be good no matter what and no matter who. She is banking on that fact being true. So to put this in a different light, the original Roman readers and this original church in Rome that Peter has begun, they're freaking out at this point because, again, up until Mark 7, Jesus has only been with Jewish people doing Jewish things in Jewish towns. Now they're going, I've been trying to figure out how I fit into this whole Christianity thing. I'm showing up to church every week not knowing if I'm going to be roasted later on at night. Do I belong? Does Jesus care about me? Is there a place for me in this story? And this woman, suddenly they go, here I am. For the first time, I have a place. For the first time, I'm going to see how Jesus interacts with somebody like me. What's going to happen next? And it's a little bit unexpected. It keeps going. Jesus said, stand in line, take your turn. The children get fed first. If there's any left over, the dogs get it. It's so important in this story that we understand the context of why Jesus came and how he came. Jesus is the Messiah of the Old Testament. He is the fulfillment of God's promises to his people that he would come and rescue them. Jesus came first for the Jewish people, and that's why the first chunk of Mark focuses intensely on the Jewish people and on Israel. But this is still not the response that we would expect. This is a PR nightmare. You can't just call somebody a dog. You can kind of hear the snickering in the crowd as the disciples in the room, who are deeply Jewish, are going like, yeah, Jesus, get her. Like, she's not supposed to be here. She's one of those people. You can feel that the initial Jewish readers in the room would have been feeling similarly. But Jesus is doing something very clever in this situation. You see, if you were Jewish, again with these ideas about what's clean and what's not clean, you would not have a dog in your house. Dogs were unclean. What they track into your house, what they would lick. Dogs were not cool if you're Jewish. However, we see in Roman pottery, in Roman frescoes, in Roman art, that dogs were deeply a part of many families, just like many are in America today. They were a part of the family. And we get one further clue, because there's lots of different words for dog in the original Greek that this was written in. Jesus could have chosen a derogatory term, which I think is what his Jewish audience really would have preferred to have happened with this unclean pagan. Instead, he uses the Greek word quon, and quon is the word that you would use to address a pet or a puppy, something that's beloved. That's a really interesting word that he chooses to use. And so as he continues, she picks up on this. Now, obviously, this is a very strange way to tell somebody that you care about them, that they belong. And I think really what Jesus is trying to do is he knows that this is a person of privilege. He knows that she's used to going first, and especially in a room of cultural minorities, I think he's addressing the idea of, do you believe that you should be first, that you should get priority, or are you willing to take second place? And her response is absolutely incredible as we go on. She said, "Of course, Master, but don't the dogs under the table get the scraps dropped by the children?" How is she unoffended by this? He just called her a dog. Again, I think this has to go back to the idea that she really trusts that he is good and that what he says is right, and that he's going to care for her in the long run. She's picking up also that he's calling her a part of the family, that he's giving her a place in the house. And her response almost clearly depicts this idea that I don't care where I am in the house, I just want to be in the house. I don't care where at the table I sit, I just want to be at the banquet. Also, there's this other really cool thing that Mark does where she's the first person. The Message translation says, "Of course, Master." Other translations will say, "Of course, Lord." This woman is the only woman in the entire book of Mark. She's the only person in the entire book of Mark to give Jesus this title, and it is his right title, this title of Lord and Master. And I think both Mark and Jesus are doing something very important. They're elevating this woman's understanding, they're elevating this woman's position, they're re-elevating this woman's dignity. And again, for the original Roman readers, for women who were in the church, who were often seen as second class, to be told by Jesus himself, "You are getting it right." Oh man, that's amazing. There's no problem for this woman by putting herself second to a minority class. She's just glad to be there. For those in the white demographics of America, and this certainly includes me, we have a lot to learn from this woman. She is willing to put aside her pride, she's willing to put aside her cultural rights, even her dignity, to listen and to learn and to accept whatever place that Jesus would give her, because she trusts Jesus and what he's doing. Man, she's an incredible example for us. It finishes with this. Jesus was impressed. "You're right," he said. "On your way, your daughter is no longer disturbed. The demonic affliction is gone." She went home and she found her daughter relaxed on the bed, her torment gone for good. Okay, again, there's lots happening here. This is the first discussion in Mark that Jesus has where it's not filled with conflict. Most of his discussions are with religious leaders or with his disciples that usually end in him being pretty corrective of how they're thinking or what they're saying. In this one, you see Jesus be impressed by someone. And more than that, he tells them, "You're right in how you're thinking about things." Again, for this woman who is Roman, to elevate her to this place of all the characters that you've met so far in Mark, and including the characters you're going to meet, she gets it. This person belongs here. She is right in what she is saying. And what is she saying? She's picking up what Jesus is dropping. He says, "You're not first place. You're not at the head of the table, but you do have a seat in the house." And she says, "You are right. I do have a seat in your house." And Jesus is so impressed that she would believe that she would trust that, and that she would be good with that. He doesn't just give her this crumb, this crumb healing. It's not something that just falls off the table. He doesn't heal her daughter just for a little amount of time or just partially heal. It is a full healing. She gets a full helping at the table of Jesus. So while her seat might be down the table, she has full access to everything that Jesus is doing here. And this story is absolutely incredible for the original readers who, for the first time, are going, okay, not only do we have a community that's like ours, not only do we have a person that looks like us, but the way Jesus chooses to interact with this person is actually to say, you have a place here. You belong here. I am working on your behalf too, and I love you. Man, they would have been fist pumping like crazy. In a moment, they're going to be asked the question from Jesus in Mark chapter 8, who do you say that I am? And for the first time, this group of Roman Christians are going to be able to say, who do I say that you are? You're mine. You're for me. You came for me. You care about me. That's who I think you are. This all turns on a dime here in Mark 7. And I think for us as modern day Christians, there's so much familiarity to these stories that we miss little details like this, where we would go, oh my gosh, I can locate myself in a gospel. And the way that Jesus would treat me or somebody like me is with such utter grace and compassion and belonging. It's just uncommon. Finally, one other really critical detail that happens here is that this is the first time where Jesus does kind of a long distance healing. I don't know if it's because he's just going on vacation mode and he wants to clear his work inbox and just be done working. But I think it's an incredible detail that all the healings up until now, Jesus has seen the person, he's put his hand on a person, there's been something personal and physical about his presence being there. And in this story, we see Jesus not have to be there, and his power is still perfect and wonderful and complete. For Roman Christians living in a place where they're going, I didn't get to see Jesus, I don't get to see Jesus, I'm terrified. There are places in my community that need healing, that are broken. Can Jesus do anything about that if he's not here? Yeah, he can. He is that powerful that he does not need to be physically there. Jesus' person transcends the physical realm, and that will become an important detail as we get closer to his cross and to his resurrection. So what does this mean for us? There's just a couple things that I would want to highlight. This story is set with the backdrop of these Pharisees who are concerned about what's offending them because these disciples are not washing their hands properly. What offends? What comes from the inside of us? What comes from the heart? That's a really big deal to Jesus. And again, he launches right into a story where sexism and race and prejudice are all things that he's going to put on display and go, are you offended by me? Who do you say that I am? What offends you? And I think to look in the mirror, what are the things that offend me? And maybe more personally, who are the people that offend me? What are the causes that I look on Instagram or Facebook or the news that I just immediately brush off and go, I don't want to engage them. I don't want to have that conversation. That is uncomfortable. Who are the people that I would look at and go, man, there are places there that need healing. There are places there that are broken. I've got to confess, there's a lot of those places in our world, right? I look at and go, yeah, there's stuff that's broken. I have no interest in being a part of it. But I think over and over in the Gospels, we see Jesus move into those places to intentionally go there. And this is a cool story because he's going to a place where he actually probably shouldn't go. He really doesn't belong there. And we see this woman doing the same thing. They're going there because something needs healing. And this is the ministry of reconciliation that Paul will talk about later in the New Testament. This is everything that has to do with the heart of what God's about in the incarnation of himself in the world. Displace yourself to go to where healing needs to happen. Would you consider moving towards things that offend you? Particularly, would you consider moving towards people that offend you? I don't know if there's been a more clear time in American history where the needs and the brokenness and the places of healing are so clear in everything that's going on around us. Are you displacing yourself? Are you choosing to move into those places? And it's not just enough to have ideas about those places, to have the right thoughts. I want to begin to wrap us up with just a little bit of an excerpt from a book called The Cross and the Lynching Tree by an author named James Cone. James is one of the leading Black theologians of our time. And one of the chapters in this book, he takes some time to write about one of his friends and a contemporary of his. He's not damning of him, but he is calling out a place where the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, who was the chair of the Department of Ethics and Theology at Union Seminary in Chicago, or in New York, during the Civil Rights Movement, he's calling him out on a place where he really missed an opportunity to understand this idea of displacing himself. He says this: Reinhold Niebuhr is widely regarded as America's most influential theologian in the 20th century and possibly in all of American history. Among white theologians, he was particularly sensitive to the evils of racism and spoke and wrote on many occasions of the suffering of the African Americans. Few theologians of the 20th century focused as much attention on the cross, one of the central themes of his work, and yet even he failed to connect the cross to its most vivid reenactment of his time, lynching. To reflect on this failure is to address a defect in the conscience of white Americans and to suggest why African Americans have needed to trust and cultivate their own theological imagination. He drives this point home by finishing with this: what accounts for the contradictions in Niebuhr's perspective on race? In part, they're due to his failure to step into black people's shoes and to walk around in them, to use the words of Atticus Finch in Harper Lee's classic To Kill a Mockingbird. It was easy for Niebuhr to walk around in his own shoes as a white man, to view the world from that vantage point, but it takes a whole lot of empathic effort to step into those of black people and see the world through the eyes of African Americans. This is a situation that's unique to race, but it's something that you can take into any other context. To displace yourself means to be involved with people. It means to be involved in relationships. For Jesus, he knew this woman and her story. She was willing to go and know Jesus. As we're looking at the broken places in the world that need healing, it's not enough to have opinions about them and to stay at a safe arm's distance. We have to be willing, as people who choose to follow Jesus, to move into those places, to get to know those people, and just like this woman does in this story, to stop and to listen and to learn and to humbly consider with Jesus, where is my place? And to be content if our place is different than maybe where we thought it was or where we'd like it to be. But we can trust his goodness, that that's ultimately what will get us through. And finally, I want to end with a note for people who are a part of this discovery community, or anybody who might be watching today, who come from the margins of our community, people who may have been hurt, whether by the church or whether by individuals or whether by our country. And I'd particularly like to speak to our friends who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, as well as folks to the LGBTQ plus community. If there are places or times, and surely there are, where you have felt made to be second class, where you have heard people call you dogs and not in a fond sense, where you have felt shoved to the outsides, and where you have felt this offense directly attack you, this is not the way of Jesus. If you were to engage him at the very core of this story, you would find a man who's sidestepping this offense, who's sidestepping all of these cultural norms, to look you directly in the face and say, you belong, and I love you, and you have a place here. And for the places where the church, where Christians, where our country is continuing to get it wrong, I am so sorry, and that is not the way of Jesus. As we wrap up today, I wanted to finish with one final prayer. It's one of my favorites, and it was penned a long time ago by a man called St. Francis of Assisi, and it goes like this: Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying to ourselves that we are born into eternal life. Amen.
raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me.
I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive.
I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I raise a hallelujah. I will watch the darkness flee. I raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery. I raise a hallelujah. Fear
we're glad you joined us today. If you need anything at all, remember to email pastoralcare@dc2.me, and have a great week.